Welcome to Legacy Cast, your source for hearing from top influencers, industry experts, and successful business owners who are telling their unique story about life, values, goals, business strategies, and the various causes they are so passionate about. Future generations will come to be impacted by what is happening today, whether positive or negative, and our mission is to focus on what is going to affect change for the better. Hosted each weekday by James Snow, a former U.S. Army combat medic, now founder and principal advisor of James Advisors Group, a full-service financial planning firm in North Texas. This is Legacy Cast. Welcome, Legacy Cast listeners. This is your host, James Snow, coming to you from North Texas here in my lovely Legacy Cast bunker. Trying to stay cool in Texas because we're roasting at this time of year. I have a guest with me here, Mike Baker, and Mike's a retired Army National Guard gentleman, and now has gone into different directions that are very interesting, I think. And so I certainly enjoy and appreciate him coming on the program today to talk about what he's doing in his world that's going to build on his idea of having a legacy, and really what legacy means to him and for his family, for his community. So without further ado, Mike, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here very much so.
Yeah, and Mike was telling me just beforehand, he was speaking about his podcast, because he also does have a podcast he's got going, the Sedated Man. And so maybe give us a minute and tell us about what that is.
Well, basically, the Sedated Man, the podcast, is about covering the issues for Christian men, and we're pretty specific. It's all Christian men, but really Christian men who are married or remarried, who are between 35 and 55, because that's generally where we really see the issues. Who are beat down by society. And unfortunately, society and culture have crept into congregations, and we want to raise those guys back up. They're told that their masculinity is toxic. They're told that it's, that being a man and biblical manhood is not necessarily a good thing, and that's within their own congregations, mind you. And so they begin to sedate, and sedation can be like we were talking about before. It can be alcohol or pornography or drugs, but it can be food. It can be Netflix. It can be sports, high school sports, whatever they can use to disappear and not feel basically completely worthless, because the culture that's creeping in now is telling them that their biblical manhood is no longer acceptable. And unfortunately, a lot of men are stepping down, feeling the weight that society's putting on them.
Yeah, and that's a huge topic and a huge undertaking. To jump into that one, because it's like you say, it has reached into so many different directions, and like you're mentioning the movies in Hollywood, they put such an emphasis on. It seems like even putting down true manhood and what that means, and it's very unfortunate that I feel at least that has occurred, because it's taking something away from society that God put into it.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. Satan he's not a dummy. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't have to infiltrate and completely wipe out Christianity. He's just got to take it down a peg at a time. And where you start with that is the leader of the house. And I mean, scripturally speaking, men are supposed to be leadership. And if I can say it for a second, it's funny. Nobody ever questions when you go to a business. Like, say you go to a car dealership, you're dealing with a salesman, that the salesman has a boss. Nobody ever questions that. But when it comes to the household, it's set up very much like a business. There is the guy who's supposed to be the leadership, and then there are those below him. That doesn't mean that his wife is subservient to him. She is a fellow heir, okay? Means they got to work together, means they got to talk about things, but ultimately, scripturally, he's supposed to make sure that direction is correct. But society has made it so that when you say there's a boss in the house, that's a problem. You can go to the car dealership and nobody has a problem with it, or any other business, but in the household, no, we can't have bosses. That doesn't work.
Yeah, and that completely undermines, the family unit, which then in turn starts to undermine society, because as we've seen, fatherless households are part of what is, degrading so many inner cities and many areas across the country, that they have a single parent household, which in some cases can't be avoided, but in those cases where it could have been, if the man had not stepped out of his seat and stepped away from the family, all the things that fell apart afterwards could have been avoided.
Oh yeah, I mean, people wonder why. Oh, sorry. People wonder why. I should say, guys my age. A lot of people my age have a problem with younger people now. And I mean, there's always been, those age gaps where something they do annoys, somebody older. But I really think the dividing line right now between older men and younger boys is so many men have stepped out of the home, just like you said. Whether they still live there or not is irrelevant. They've either mentally or physically stepped out of the home, and people don't realize that leadership isn't something you just are born with. Leadership is taught, and it's taught from father to son typically. Okay.
Correct.
Or in some cases mentor to mentee, but primarily father to son. And if the fathers aren't exhibiting and practicing leadership, the sons have no role model to find. And you shouldn't wonder why, when you ask a kid if you ask a young man now what he wants to do when he gets older, if he wants to go to college, what he wants to do, he doesn't know. He has no idea.
Right.
And it's like an epidemic now. I meet more kids who have no idea what they want to do than I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. That's true, and it's like you mentioned the term epidemic. It's at epidemic proportions here in this country, because we've allowed this to happen, and kind of to rein back in towards the concept of legacies is what greater legacy do you have than what you pass to your children? Because that's one of the things that God put us on this earth for, is to be part of something bigger, and we were told, to be fruitful and multiply. That's not just to procreate. That's to multiply all the goodness that you're given, the blessings and the knowledge, the talents that we're given uniquely, that make each of us a unique person. It's to take that and multiply it. It's to take all the things that we're stewards of and to multiply it. So it's not just one piece of the puzzle. That was a great commandment given to us, that we're to multiply all of the good that's given to us.
Yeah, absolutely. The word I really like, two words you used that I really like: legacy, which is one thing I really appreciate about your podcast, because taking on financial legacy is tough stuff. And I'm still working on it, because I was a late bloomer in that area. I'm still working on it. And I absolutely agree. But legacy is obviously more than finance. Legacy is leadership in your sons. Legacy is morals and ethics through your family. Legacy is huge. I used to think when I was younger that if my kids remember me and my grandkids remember me, then I've done well. But within the last, I'd say, year, I kind of had my own epiphany, kind of my aha moment. If only my kids and my grandkids remember me, really, I failed.
Right.
Because I see such a need for leadership in their lives. I am obligated, morally and ethically obligated, and obligated by Scripture, to make sure that my legacy lasts long past my grandkids. And my grandkids will be obligated to make sure their legacy lasts long beyond their grandkids. And so in that respect, legacy is huge in Scripture. The second word I really like there is unique. Society wants men and women to be equal. Plain fact of the matter is scripturally, they're just not. They have two separate jobs really that they need to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. I have tremendous respect for women and the job they have to do in home. However, unique. Once you make everybody the same, nobody's unique any longer. And really that's what society is pushing towards, is if you remove uniqueness from the Christian household, then really you've removed the soul of Christianity.
No, that's very true. And it's a good point that you're making, because when you take away the uniqueness, then you've also taken away the value of each individual. Because if you're just like everybody else, then you have nothing special to you. And if you're not special, then you're just a number. And once you start down that road, then you completely undergirded, everything that's good in the world, because, uniqueness is what was creation. And creation was made to be unique. So it's completely undergirding, the entire essence.
Absolutely. You are absolutely correct.
So you were kind of touching slightly on it, but what do you feel personally, in your world, that legacy means to you, though? You're talking about to your children and grandchildren and so forth, but kind of the high level description.
Legacy is, I think 200 years ago there was no doubt that people left legacy to their families. Even if they were a poor family, there was a legacy of the family name that carried through families. People were proud typically to carry their family names.
Mm-hmm.
And I think legacy as it pertains, because as Christians or as God-fearing, we carry a slightly different legacy with us. There's nothing wrong with carrying your family name with pride, because you don't see that happening a lot anymore. Okay, so but legacy means that as the father, you understand you're obligated to make sure that your kids have the tools to carry on biblical ethics, biblical morals, and the family name, and make sure the three are tied together so that people seek to know information from you. Because really,
mm-hmm.
if you're teaching your kids to seek and save, which is the ultimate legacy, then their actions have to dictate the type of person that somebody wants to seek that information from. And really, I think that's legacy in and of itself.
Yeah, very well put. And one way that I word it to people, and in the intro to the program that I put together, it's people telling their story their way, so that the generations to come know what mattered to you, what you cared about, what you loved, what you had values in, what you believed in, and then the things that you affected positive change in. And so, that ultimately is where our legacy is. It's not just a financial one, though. That's part of what I do in business on the side level. It's really not. That's just a piece of it, because finance is only a vehicle to get all the rest of it to the destination 4 or 5 generations from now. That's just the way that you're able to carry the story. You have to have a story, though, and that's all the rest of your life. So, do you feel like it's important that people start considering more deliberately, more intentionally what their legacy is than what they're doing right now?
Oh, absolutely. Because the time of the green tree, like Scripture says, everything's good. Nobody thinks about it. But there's something I reference in my podcast called convenience and division. So everything has become so convenient, like whether it be technology, whether it be, primarily technology. Technology has made everything so convenient that now division is easy. It's always easier to say, well, I don't like what somebody said to me on Facebook, therefore I'm not going to talk to them anymore, because, and usually this is the excuse. Well, they're not going to listen anyway, so I'm not even going to bother. And so what that does is it eliminates my need to actually go talk to them, where Scripture tells me I should go talk to them.
Sure.
So, convenience and division is huge. And really, the sooner we can eliminate convenience as an issue, and I'm not talking about eliminating technology. Technology is a tool. It can be used either way. If you have problems with technology, then you need to go to a brother or sister, depending on who you are, and get some accountability and help get that reeled in. Okay.
Right.
But if you can do it yourself, that's great. Do it yourself. But the sooner you reel in convenience, the harder division becomes, because then you've got to deal with people on a face-to-face basis. You can't just text them. You can't just, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no drama in my family. I would love to say that, but there is. I mean, I've got a son who hasn't talked to me in 12 years, and I got another son who's not talking to me currently that I need to talk to, and we're dealing with that slowly, but we're not dealing with it via text, and we're not dealing with it via Messenger, and we're not dealing with it via Facebook. We're going to deal with it man to man, because that's what Dad taught him to do. Yeah,
and it's important that you mention that, because everyone, all the people listening here have been in a situation where you're somewhere and you look around, and how many people have their noses buried in their phones or in their iPads or whatever. I mean, they're walking down the street running into telephone posts, for crying out loud. And there's videos of that on Facebook where people run out in the middle of traffic because their face is buried in their phone. and we need to unplug from that stuff, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. It should be a tool. It's not the end all be all with everything that we should have in life. And families need to come back together. Like even with my family, it's very important. Say for example, the dinner table. That should be a no devices environment. Don't bring your phone to the table. Leave it in the room, another room. Don't bring your phone to the table. You can spend time with your family and talk to them. Don't text them across the table. And I've even seen that at restaurants. Husband and wife sitting there and they're texting each other, and just it makes me laugh, but it almost makes me want to cry, because it's just so ridiculous that they're right there face to face. They should be having good, wholesome conversation, and they're conducting it through a very impersonal, very cold means, and it takes away, it robs the other person, and it's just really horrible, and we need to stop that. We need to stop that as a society, I think. So what you're doing with your podcast, like I was telling you before, I get on such a soapbox about this, because it is such an undergirding and undercutting thing in society that it's just it's hamstringing society by getting so involved in all of these things that take us away from where we should be.
Well,
so
I think Christians. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. You had something.
Oh, Christians by design. Okay, a lot of people forget. A lot of people don't realize this. All right, if you look at when God came down and looked at the Tower of Babel, He made the comment when He came down and looked at it, and now nothing they purpose to do will be impossible for them. So from the get-go, mankind was designed to accomplish anything He set His mind to. Okay.
Right.
Then you fast forward to the New Testament. Now you've got the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit within Christians. So now, not only can they do anything they set their mind to, they've got powerful help to accomplish that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But you have so many congregations who are inside the box thinkers. God is not an inside the box thinker. He designed us to accomplish anything, and then He doubled that ability. That is totally outside the box thought. I just did a podcast on on why Walmart is crushing your Christianity. And it wasn't about picking on Walmart as a business. I totally understand why they sell to the demographic they sell to. But if you walk through Walmart is targeting people who are inside the box thinkers, people who are wondering, how can I cut costs? How can I live smaller? How can I, all inside the box? How do I make this 9 to 5 work, because I can't afford this, but if I go to Walmart, I can afford this. And really, Scripture does not paint a picture of an inside the box thinker. And I think legacy is suffering because of it. That was the point I wanted to get to. Sure. Legacy is diminishing because the 9 to 5 mentality has become its own genre, its own avatar, and businesses are in droves driving toward it. And it's easier for people to just go somewhere where they can afford something than to think how they can overcome their affordability issues. Sure.
And you're hitting on a very key area that I deal with, in my business world, that, people are living in such a scarcity mindset and have become accustomed to that. It's what I've lovingly termed the big lie. And, we're taught, we're going to go to school. We get our degrees, we get that 9 to 5 job. We're going to work in that 9 to 5 job for 40, 45 years. We're going to retire from that job. And then we're going to live off our retirement for the rest of our life, and we're going to be happy. And the problem is that's not going to happen. You may do all of those other things, but the last thing is not going to happen, because even if you do get to that point of retiring after working the 9 to 5 for 45 years, you probably in all likelihood are not going to have enough to live beyond what you saved up. And so there has to be something else going on. And so it's having that abundance mindset, which is in Scripture, that through God all things are possible. And you have that abundance mindset to where you're able to accrue things, and you take those blessings and you build upon them so they can compound. And you do that, in my case, through a financial means, that you're compounding it through proper handling. And then at the end of the day, when you get to that retirement age, which may or may not be what you do, you have way more than what you could have accumulated otherwise. And it's not looking at it from a 9 to 5 position. It's doing it as, you're living your life, but you're living in the today, and you have your means and your needs, and you're building on it, and you're expounding upon that. So it's really changing your thinking. It's turning it all completely inside out. And society has become so crippled, I think, by the, okay, I just need to get a job so I can, get to the end of my life. But they forget about the fact that there is a life between point A and point B. There's so much life in there, and it shouldn't just be about the drudgery of work. There's so much more. I mean, we have gifts and talents that we should be using and blessing other people and blessing those around us so that they can in turn bless other people.
Absolutely. My wife just published a book. Mm-hmm. Now, my wife, I'm very, very proud of her, but she went through high school. She was labeled dyslexic. She was put in a special resources room. And then she was dumped suddenly back into high school when that time came. All right. And so she spent high school fighting with teachers because they never prepped her for that. They just threw her out there. And so because she thought she had a disability, she acted as though she had one in that respect as far as dyslexia went. So she dropped out of school, which is not surprising. So now you fast forward all these years later, she has a blog. She coaches other women, and she just published her first book. And it's mindset. It's total mindset. I knew when Absolutely. I first met her, she had it in her to do it. I knew that she had it in her to do it, and I pushed her. I didn't really push hard, but every opportunity I had to make sure that I could destroy that mindset that she had, I would take it. You can do this. Sure. You can do this, and she did it. So yeah. So you're right on the money.
Very, very true, Mike. And I'm glad that you're able to kind of draw that connection in there, because that is how that happens. I personally had some of that, to where teachers were telling me, you're not going to be able to achieve, fill in the blank. And fortunately, I'm stubborn enough that I didn't listen to any of them, because it's like, who are you to tell me what I can't do? And so I had that stubbornness from my mom. So hopefully she'll hear this program at some point, and know I gave her a little plug there. So how does your business, from the entrepreneurial or CEO standpoint, how does that come in as far as maybe a few things that maybe still keep you up at night? There's that saying that, what keeps you up at night? Are there some of those things now that you think a lot about that sort of concern you still?
You mean as far as they're concerned to the sedated man itself?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking a little bit beforehand about one of the programs I'm building right now, and it's a public speaking program for men that deals specifically with public speaking within the church. Now, why would that keep me up at night? Because so many men, the number one fear is public speaking. All right. The number two fear, do you know what it is?
Probably rejection.
No, being burned alive.
Oh.
so public speaking is more feared than being burned alive. So, I really, really think, and this is my honest, heartfelt belief, that if we can get men back up in front of their congregations, I think that would ignite a spark that would return them, I think it would light a spark that would light the way to returning to leadership within their families, within their congregations, and within their communities. Because that little step, I mean, it's huge. It's a huge confidence thing. It's a huge confidence builder. And I don't want these guys thinking they've got to get these big programs or go to these those are great programs. Like Toastmasters is a great program. And if they want to do that, I would encourage them to do it. But if they need something more simple, just something they can purchase that will help them deal with, how do I set up a classroom for a class? How do I move in front of a congregation when I'm preaching? Things like that may be the spark that moves them to a whole different level of thinking.
Yeah, and I like the program that you're putting together there, because there's going to be so much value in being among your peers that you're already comfortable with. It's that safe environment. So when I was saying the number two fear being rejection, that's kind of one of my deep-seated fears is originally it was public speaking also. So, doing seminars and conferences and, even the podcast is sort of my therapy, because I'm having to completely get outside of my comfort zone to do it. But then that second thing being, the rejection piece. If you're within a circle where you're safe and you're able to speak about those things and learn how to do that public speaking in a proper way, then you're going to gain so much more from it, and you're going to be edified in it, and in turn you can then glorify God through what you're doing.
And public speaking, whether it's a small devotional, small group, or preaching in front of 1,000 people, it helps build you in a manner that you just can't be built otherwise, and it helps you to fail, and to fail gracefully. And if you don't fail gracefully, that's great. You can still get right back up and take care of it. If you make a mistake, no problem. Nobody's going to crucify you for it. They're just going to get up and take care of it,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, men have egos. There's no secret about that. So, public speaking, it's a healthy way of feeding your ego, is being able to bless other people in a public setting. So, it's a healthy way of, using that ego. Sorry, I love it. I like it.
No,
so do you?
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that every guy has a message. Every guy has a message, and it's our obligation as men, no matter how scared we are to do it, to get that message out.
That's true. Fair point. Do you believe it's important that people, not only from a business side, obviously we have, business plans that businesses should put together, and that's sort of a rhetorical question when I say, do businesses need a business plan? But do you think they should also do that for their personal lives, like with their family, to create some sort of structure and plan that out for the long term?
Absolutely. One thing that a lot of families lack, we used to, we've counseled many married couples and many families. Okay. So, it really depends. We have 2 courses that we use. We didn't create the courses. One is the Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage by Mark Gungor. And the other is Growing Kids God's Way. And I forget the names of the people who put that together. The one thing that we've always really hammered home with families, especially with the men, is family identity. And why? Because family identity takes planning. All right. Family identity, they have to sit down and agree what our family identity is. And then as a family, they have to agree that I don't care how bad our family name was before this family. Now it's awesome to be whatever your last name is. In my case, my last name's Baker. My dad was an alcoholic. My whole family history, quite honestly, is just not good. And so I told my sons, there was a lot of, anytime they heard the name, a lot of people heard the name Baker, it carried with it a negative connotation. And so I told my sons, because I have 5 sons, I said, hey, from now on, it's an awesome thing to be a baker. I don't care what happened here. From now on, this is positive. And it took planning. We had to sit down and agree what our family identity was. We had to agree what that meant for activities, what that meant for how we would talk to each other, what that meant for how would we treat mom, how would I treat my wife, So you're absolutely correct. I think a plan is a great way. And Scripture's got everything you need in there to establish a family identity.
Yeah, it's the perfect blueprint, because everything that you need is there, and it's like going on a vacation from Los Angeles to New York. You have to have a roadmap to get there, and if you don't have a roadmap that shows there's a pothole at this place, there's road construction at this place, and there's detours going on, then you're going to run into those and you run into trouble. Same thing with Scripture. It's the perfect roadmap that shows you from point A to point B to point C, all the way through your life, of what you should do, when you should do it, and how you should do it. So it's and I like the irony that you have one of those legacy names, Baker, because in Europe, that's here we're on a legacy cast broadcast here, and in Europe, names were very much a very literal sense of what their legacy was. People that had a certain job and their name portrayed that job. Baker, Thatcher, Hunter, I can go on and on and on. And it's those different names that denoted what the family legacy was. And so we should pull that back. Absolutely. And let our name again portray that. Maybe not necessarily what our family business is in all instances, but it should still tell about what our legacy is.
Absolutely. When people use that name, it should be with, pride and positivity in it.
Sure.
Because they know that family and they know that family's solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be something that should be said with esteem. Not just
exactly.
To the negative. It should be something that when people speak it, they speak it with regard and with good esteem.
Exactly.
So, what do you think? Just from your experience, Mike, with new businesses that are starting up, and we see businesses all the time failing. What do you think some of the main reasons are for that?
For new businesses failing, lack of planning.
Right.
I mean, a lot. It's really easy to it's really easy to blame it on the bank, blame it on the market, blame it on whatever. The truth is any business where the business owner pushed hard and never gave up, basically have always succeeded. Okay, but at some point, if you decide I can't do this anymore, I'm giving up, well, then really the business failed because of you and because of poor planning. I mean, I've had failed businesses. I've had bad investments, and really I understood the risk and I made the investment and it didn't pan out, and I had a business and I understood the risk and maybe I didn't plan very well for it. I had one business I planned very well and a couple I didn't plan very well at all. And those businesses no longer exist. Whereas the one I planned well, I was able to sell, and now it still exists to this day.
Excellent.
Planning.
Yeah, like the saying goes, you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
I should probably have it posted up on the wall behind me. So what do you think some of the specific roadblocks and or resources are that you'd advise a new business owner to be mindful of?
Ooh, roadblocks. Okay, here, I'll give you a lesson I just learned. I recently, and I'll be the first to admit it, I recently made a bad investment within the last 6 months. I researched it as much as I could. I knew the risk. I got into it, and as of right now, it hasn't fallen flat on its face, but it's not paying out like it should have, like I ran numbers on it to begin with. The thing that really was my mistake was I'm a service plumber by day, and I know service-based business, and this was an online investment I was working with, and I measured this online investment business by service business standards.
Right.
And I didn't realize it then. I thought I was doing what I should be doing, but I should have done a little more research. And as a result, now it's not working out so well. So, the thing when you're doing your market research, you don't want to get analysis paralysis. You don't want to just freeze up and not do anything. But at the same time, you want to do as much research as you can to make sure that you understand what it is you're getting into and what the risks and the pitfalls could be, and then move forward. Don't be afraid. You're going to fail. You're going to make a mistake. And I would say that's probably the biggest one. Don't be afraid to fail. It's not failure. It's education.
That's true. We learn from those mistakes, and no success really happens without failures. If you are lucky every single time, then you learn nothing. But the times that you stumble, we learn from that. And if we stumble twice on the same thing, then it's our own fault. We had the opportunity to learn from the first time. So what, as far as personal values and beliefs, how do those play a role in your business ventures, and how would you advise others to incorporate their own values and beliefs into theirs?
Well, I might have a little different take on this. So I personally, when I get a business card from somebody and it has the little fish on it, I don't like that. And because I am a huge believer, nobody walked around in the first century church saying, look at me, look at me. In fact, there were some people that said, look at me. They were Sadducees and Pharisees, and they weren't looked on very well. Okay.
Right.
So when you do that stuff, it might make you feel better, but really a lot of people, because Christianity has such a negative connotation to a lot of people anymore who are outside of Christ, it can have can have an impact that you don't want it to have. So, really, if you want to communicate those things, it should absolutely communicate in your business principle, in your family principle, like we were talking about names. When those names are said, they should be with esteem. When your business comes up, it should be the same way. I worked for a guy, I'm not Mormon, but my boss is Mormon, and he is very ethical, and I appreciate that about him very much. And anytime you talk to somebody who has done business with him, they will tell you straight up that he's one of the most honest guys they know.
Right.
And and he doesn't have, hey, I'm a Mormon on his business card. He doesn't have it on the website. People know he's Mormon because they've asked him, because his character dictates such that it's not what they're used to dealing with. They're used to dealing with, contractors that are just kind of jerks, whereas my boss is not that way. Very even, very fair, do what he can to give you the customer service you deserve.
Yeah. I like how you're putting that. And there's the saying that probably everyone has heard of. You'll know them by their fruit. That's how it should be.
Yep.
The saying isn't you will know them by their bark.
Yeah,
that's
right.
not the same. You're not going to know them by what you see up front. You're going to know them by what they produce. And so that's how we should be. It's not
Absolutely.
beat them in the head with your belief system, but at the same time, what you're producing should tell the story. Actions speak louder than words, as they say.
Absolutely.
So when you were starting your business, and then even since you're National Guard retiree, there's kind of that transition as well. How did you transition from one model to the next? Because there probably were some hurdles that you went through going from one mindset to the next mindset. So how did you overcome that?
Well, being a National Guardsman, I mean, you got to overcome that mindset every month. But
Yeah.
But it's been fairly recent since I retired, and people ask me, well, how's it feel to be retired? And I'm like, well, I haven't had a big enough gap to really feel the difference of having all of my weekends and all of my days in a year back. Because a lot of people still think it was just 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. And that model, when they started deploying National Guard troops, that model went out the window.
Right.
And it's a tremendously higher amount of time now. But the transition, I was a business owner before, and then I got back into plumbing, and I won't go into that, but we had some difficulties when I deployed to Iraq the second time, and we sold the business. But I had a very successful business, had some issues, like I said, had to sell it while I was in Iraq the second time. And that transition to go back, going back to being an employee and then trying to get back into business, it's been difficult. Really, really difficult, because I had momentum. And once that momentum stopped, oh my God. I mean, and then trying to step into a whole nother genre of business. I don't regret doing it, but at the same time, it's hard. It is a hard transition, but it requires the same thing as anything else, a lot of prayer.
Sure. Yeah, that's a fair point there, because so many businesses are not able to succeed, and so you just have to be patient. Patience is not only a virtue, but it's required. It's patience is mandatory. It's very mandatory.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So, what compelled you to start up the podcast, The Sedated Man?
Oh, well, that's an interesting story. So for anybody who's listened to my podcast knows that I'm pretty straightforward. I can be pretty brash, pretty straightforward, because I just don't believe in a lot of fluff. And so I had never gone to like a men's event before. And as I get older, and I was kind of a lone wolf for a long time, because when I told men they needed to step up, it wasn't popular. They were like, whoa, I don't think I like that. And then, so I ended up being a lone wolf a lot. Well, as I got older, it was evident that there are no lone wolves in Scripture, really. Okay. Scripture is a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to, I think it was last October, actually. I went to a Wake Up Warrior event. Now, Wake Up Warrior is not a religious organization. Not a religious organization, okay?
Yeah.
However, I really liked the idea of what they were doing, trying to return men to masculinity. All right. There were some religious guys in the organization, but it is in and of itself not a religious organization. So I was sitting there during one of the events in California, and the idea for the Sedated Man, I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, it was that clear. I hadn't even been thinking it before that. I had been looking for something. I knew that I needed, I hadn't been. I always ask my wife, what's it like to be passionate? Because I don't know. Well, from that moment, I understood. I mean, and it hit me hard. And so when I got home, I began putting things together, I guess you could say. And so I started the podcast, and I knew the monetary model was going to take a while to put into place, but I had to start something, and I had to start moving forward. And so really it was born there at the Wake Up Warrior event. And it's been fueled by many other men I've met through doing my podcast now. Many other men who are doing similar movements. The only thing I would say is if you're going to have a movement, it needs to be world changing, because my idea for the Sedated Man is worldwide. It's not just my local congregation. All right. And a lot of these smaller movements, great, awesome men, great movements. But in my opinion, maybe they're thinking a little too small. They want to focus just on their congregation, which is great if that's where they're pulled to. But if you want to make a lasting impact, especially in the world today where everything has been so watered down, you have to think globally,
right.
Especially with technology. You have to think globally, because there's so much work to do that nobody will do it if they don't believe it can be done on a global level. So somebody's got to step out there and do it. And that was our intent from the very beginning, was to be a global movement that others would tap into, that we could provide tools, that we could point people in those local areas to those other local groups to give them the tools they needed to, start to return to manhood.
And I like how you're putting that it should be a global movement, because that really, I mean, we are in a global society now that it's so easy to speak to someone right now that's on the other side of the world. I've had guests from every continent other than Antarctica, and maybe someday I'll get an Antarctic guest on the podcast. We'll see. Have to learn Penguin, I think. But
Christ's message was global.
Yeah, and so that's how we should look at that. To not limit what can be done through what we're doing today, because Christ owns the sheep on 1,000 hills, or the goats on 1,000 hills. So why not let the same thing happen through what we're doing?
Exactly.
Are there other professions that you toyed with wanting to get into?
Yeah, sure. I mean, plumbing. I had 5 boys. I didn't have a great growing up, and so I needed to step into something at some point. And so I stepped into plumbing. Plumbing wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do forever, but it did what I needed it to do. And I'm very thankful that the Lord provided me a way to feed my family and take care of things. Mm-hmm. I have, for a very long time, wanted to be a professional motivational speaker as well. Mm-hmm. And that is something I'm kind of pushing towards. I would like to do it for the Sedated Man. I'd like to do it also outside the Sedated Man if I can, because I think there's, everybody thinks there's all these motivational speakers. Well, those motivational speakers motivate a small percentage of the world, and there is so many more people that need it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so yeah, that and my wife and I have been toying with some online affiliate type business as well, profession, because what we really like is we would like to be able to be mobile. We'd like to be able to have a business that we can run from anywhere, so that we can go help and do the things we need to do in the places we feel we need to be.
Yeah, and that really does tap into, you're talking about the multiple streams, is tapping into the modern business model that here in the 21st century, it's not just what you do as your regular job. You can have 4 or 5 other streams, and should have 4 or 5 other streams of income going on that are passively building in the background. And so
we also have a duplex. Sorry, we also have a duplex. So
so you're in the real estate as well.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And real estate is definitely a good investment. So
Yeah. Yep.
That's good stuff. What would you say is your greatest personality strength?
Oh my goodness. My greatest personality strength. Well, it'll sound odd, but I'm not afraid to hurt people's feelings. I think nowadays that feelings have become, I think feelings 200 years ago and feelings now are very different. I think, now because of social media that everybody has become tremendously more sensitive. And now because masculinity, and that's part of the reason masculinity is being considered toxic. And so for me, if, in my opinion, if you truly love somebody or love somebody's soul, you're going to tell them what they need to hear, and you're going to tell them straightforward. And so, right. I've hurt a lot of feelings, but I've helped a lot of people, and eventually people, they get over it. They still have that ability to get over it, and they do.
Yeah, I totally agree there. And in fact, I'm probably a little more sadistic because when I'm meeting with people, I'll tell them, this may hurt your feelings, but I just need to have your permission to do it. I warn them up front that I may say something they don't want to hear, but it's for their own good. And so, just making sure that they can, think as an adult. We don't need to be.
I do the same thing
about it.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I always tell people will ask me a question and I'll say, why are you asking me? And they say, because I know you'll tell me the truth. And so I always say the same thing. All right, you're asking a question. Are you sure that you want me to answer your question? Because I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Right.
So, I get you.
Right. So the flip side of that question would be, what's your greatest weakness, do you think?
My greatest weakness, self-confidence, quite honestly. I am very, very hard. My wife will tell you right now that I am, I will beat myself up and question myself constantly. So I work on that every day.
I can relate with that one. Yeah, perfectionist and control freak is my thing. So
I'm not a control freak, but
I like to do everything myself, and then I have to have it perfect, and then I'll beat myself up if I don't achieve both.
Yep, I hear
you. Makes life interesting. So when you're brainstorming, is there a special place, Mike, that you go to do all of your brainstorming, your idea getting?
If I can sit down and do it, I'll do it in my office, which is where I'm at right now. But I have a lot of, I live in Montana, and where we're at is, a fairly rural community. And so, and I live about 45 minutes away from where I work. And so I get a lot of windshield time, and no joke, I carry a sticky notepad, and I constantly am bringing home 3 and 4 sticky notes because I had to stop, write something down, keep driving, stop, write something down, keep driving. So I would say between my office and my vehicle.
Yeah. I understand that. I spend tons of windshield time here in North Texas. We can drive 2-3 hours just to get across the metro. So I spend lots of time behind the wheel. So yeah, behind the wheel and in nature, I would say is probably right, but speed.
Nature does help. Creation. Yeah. Oh yeah. If we go on vacation is an awesome place to come up with ideas.
Mm-hmm. So if you describe at a very high level what you're doing within your business model, how would you describe that for someone that's wanting to follow in your footsteps and start some of the ventures that you're doing? How would you describe that?
How would I describe how to get into what I'm doing?
Right.
As far as
what you do on it, like on a daily basis, kind of like what your day-to-day looks like.
Well, my day-to-day, what it looks like, I go to work, I come home, and I spend 2 or 3 hours working on my online business or on my podcast. I have my podcast primarily set aside for Saturdays. That's when I sit down and I really put everything together, and then I get it recorded and I get it on. So, the one thing I didn't do as well in the beginning was allot time. There are people who can, you got to decide what kind of person you are. Are you a person who can do a little bit over time, or are you a person who needs a block? Okay.
Right.
What I have found is I'm the type of person who needs a block of time. If I have a half hour to take care of an hour project, I won't do it because I need that hour to finish the project. And so you really first, I would say you need at a higher level, you need to decide, are you a pieces of time or block of time person? And really, do you know what your passion is? And can you fit that passion or that interest into those blocks of time? Do you have blocks of time that A, you're willing to put forth, or B, you're willing to sacrifice? Because there's some time that's just easy to put up. And then there's other time that you're like, oh, but I got this other thing I do. I don't have to do it, but this is important. I'm going to block this here. So really, I would say you need to decide, what's your time management look like? And then does your passion or your interest, the business you want to pursue, fit into that timeline? Or how can I fit it into that timeline? Really, I would say that most. Because if we're looking at an outside the box abundant mindset, you really should look at how can this fit up? How can this fit into my timeline? Because it's that important. Because if you're not willing to give up, for the older guys, if you're not willing to give up Saturday morning cartoons to follow your dream, then don't bother.
Yeah, and it's a very valuable concept that you put out there. One that I haven't really looked at in those terms of being a block of time versus a smaller chunks of time type person. But that's really down and dirty way of looking at it. That it really is can be that simple, because I'm one of those blocks of time kind of people as well. That I can't break things up into small chunks and just do a little bit here, a little bit there. I have to fully invest. Get all of my weeds, taken care of. Get in the weeds and do it, and then move on to the next thing.
Well, and a lot of guys, I don't think they realize that they're chunks of time or blocks of time people. And so they'll get frustrated because they can't get it done, can't get it done. And it's not occurring to them that, okay, I'm a block of time guy. I need to just set 2 hours aside to get this done. And so they'll fight with it, and finally give up. When in truth, had they just slotted that 2 hours, it'd be done.
Sure. Fair point. Yeah. Hope our listeners are taking notes, because I certainly am. So what's something about you that you say is kind of a trivia thing, something that most people don't know about you?
Something that most people don't know about me?
Yeah.
Can be anything?
Yeah, anything.
Okay, I was afraid of the dark till I was about 16 years old. How's that?
Really?
To the point where I would jump from my light switch to my bed.
Oh, wow.
Now, just so you know, my dad wasn't a nice guy. And when I say this, it's no exaggeration, but he basically told me I was stupid from the time I was born to the time I moved out. And so I was very fearful of a lot of things. But the one thing that I was always very fearful of was the dark, which is funny because now I like horror movies. so I managed to transition. But yeah, till I was 16 years old, I would jump from the light switch to my bed.
Oh, that's interesting. I always loved the dark, and now I hate horror movies. So maybe there's a nice
there you go.
Well, Mike, what's a good way for people to be able to reach out to you? Because obviously the listeners are going to want to be able to contact you, and maybe just pick your brain about some different things. So are there some good contact techniques that you like people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, obviously they can. I have all of my contact info on my podcast if they listen to that, which most people go to iTunes for, but it's on just about every platform there is. You can also find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, All the Sedated Man. And you can reach me at my email, which is mike@thesedatedman.com.
Perfect. So listeners, you have that right here, mike@thesedatedman.com, or just go to the different platforms and look for the Sedated Man, and be able to talk to him and get some more information. Follow that podcast and subscribe to it, and get to listen to all that good information that he's throwing out there. Well, Mike, I appreciate you carving out some time today with me, and I'll let you get back to your very busy schedule. And like I say to all the people that come on the program, I thank you for being on, and we'll see you around the bend, my friend.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Looks like you too. You've been listening to Legacy Cast. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to come back next time as we speak with more top influencers, industry experts, and business owners from around the world.